For a long time, I used to think that if I am busy right now and caught up in the world, that I can just defer having a vision, defer imagining what the future would look like. And yes, that would mean that I would stay stuck where I'm at, but it's okay. Very soon in the near future, I would get to imagining the big picture. But in practice, what happens is every time we give up on imagining the future and creating a vision for ourselves that we are then consciously and unconsciously working toward, we don't stay in place. We default back to our old patterns.
Welcome to Partners in Sublime, where we explore the teachings of depth psychology and Vedic philosophy to achieve the highest levels of personal growth and self-actualization. Join me as we tap into the unconscious for intuitive guidance and creative direction. I'm your host, Shagun Chopra. Let's begin.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of Partners in Sublime. Today, we're going to talk about why having a vision is so important. And before we begin, we need to understand how the universe works for any of this to make sense. So the universe, as our Vedic texts say, is basically consciousness expressing itself in different beings and creating this reality that we think is real, but is simply the external reality, the one we perceive. But the real reality is just that we are consciousness. So in this external reality, the world we see outside, we are constantly co-creating it with each other. We are all contributing to this shared cosmic dream, and we're doing that using the power of our imagination. So imagination is key and fundamental in us being able to create this world together. In fact, we wouldn't have come as far as we have as a human race if we lacked the power of imagination. So it is very much a faculty that has been given to us so that we can design the reality that we are living in, not ourselves, but together with everyone else. But we have to do our part. So if you were going through life and you lacked a vision, two things would happen. One, you are going to not be able to participate in this process of co-creating our reality. You will become a passive receptor instead of an active participant. And in practice, that might look like you losing your sense of agency, you losing your sense of imagination and creativity, and you're essentially reacting to what the external reality is presenting to you versus taking charge, using your imagination to create it yourself. The second thing that would happen is if you are not consciously and intentionally creating your vision for the world you want to live in, the ego will rush to take its place. The ego will basically put you back into default programming where you are driven by fear, by scarcity, by survival instincts, as opposed to using your higher faculties of imagination to create something better. For a long time, I used to think that if I am busy right now and caught up in the world, that I can just defer having a vision, defer imagining what the future would look like. And yes, that would mean that I would stay stuck where I'm at, but it's okay. Very soon in the near future, I would get to imagining the big picture. But in practice, what happens is every time we give up on imagining the future and creating a vision for ourselves that we are then consciously and unconsciously working toward, we don't stay in place. We default back to our old patterns. It's like a vacuum is created. Your mind doesn't know what it's working toward, so it'll just go back to where you were. And you might actually find that you regress a little bit and start to act like your old self if you're not constantly creating that new vision that you want to have for yourself. So in practice, for me, that would look like regularly reminding myself that, yes, I have the power to create. Yes, I have the power to visualize and imagine what this future would look like. And I must continue to use it, because if I don't use it, I will default back to something that was old, something that was not something I consciously wanted to activate in me. So something will just rush up to take its space if you're not conscious of what is it that you're going toward. And I've done this at times in my life where you take a break, take a pause. Oh, things are good. Let me just deal with whatever life is offering right now. Or things are so bad that I have no time to visualize the future. And in both those instances, you nullify your progress. You end up going back, and your personal growth journey begins again when you be like, okay, no more living in this reactive mode. I am going to visualize the future that I want and then start working toward it, start progressing toward it. So, to underscore how this works or what life looks like when you don't have a vision, I am going to play a session from one of my clients. We will call her Serena. Serena is stuck. She's in a job she doesn't like, and she is trying to figure out where to go next, except she does not have clarity on what that next is. So listen on, and I will see you on the other side. Hey, Serena, thanks for being here. I am so excited you took the time to do this for yourself because I know you've been thinking about it for a while. So let's get into it. What's on your mind? What made you seek coaching?
I feel stuck, and usually I can figure it out myself, but this is a big one. I think this is a big one for me, and I'm having trouble like moving into my true potential, I guess you could say. I've been a leader everywhere else in my life, but at work. I mean, I have done leadership things at work, but I always seem to get blindsided, or someone takes my idea because I was too trusting and just blurted it out instead of putting it in an uneditable PDF or something. And I'm trying to figure out what to do next. And I have historically not taken risks. I've been scared of success and scared of failure. So I'm ready. I'm ready to overcome this sort of self-limitation I've been living with, I guess you could say. It's not truly me, but I don't know how to get from A to B yet.
I think you have some awareness that something internal might be going on. Um, and that's what we're here to uncover. But before we dive internally, you said you have trouble going from A to B. Describe your A and then describe your B so we know where we're going.
Is where I'm at now. I've taken a step toward a career transition, but in the meantime, I've just taken any kind of job to try to make money, and I literally have trouble getting out of bed. Sometimes in the morning, I'm like, wow, I really am hating this job. And I try to tell myself, no, it's service, and it's just temporary. But I'm like, oh my God, I'm a few months away from a 1 year anniversary. I definitely don't want to be here by a 1 year anniversary. This is the job that wasn't supposed to happen. But I like to think everything happens for a reason, or there's lessons to be learned everywhere. So this is my A. And honestly, I haven't been super disciplined about the career transition yet. There's a lot of mental and emotional labor in my teaching job, and I come home, I'm like exhausted. But I realize there's also some sort of belief system that I've been carrying around with me about myself. And the times I've been successful, like being a program manager at a top graduate school in the country, I feel like I have temporarily overcome that sort of, temporarily expanded the sort of default belief system. And then I go back into like, oh, I can't find a better job. I can't find, my next thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just
You're
looking.
really, yeah, you're really grappling with it right now. I heard your A. So A is taking any kind of job that pays the bills, just to, like as a stopgap until you can get to your B. And what's the B?
I think I don't have clarity on it. I can't visualize it so much that I can start to make it happen. I think that is part of the issue. So I'm heading into the direction of being more analytical. I'm already analytical, but I feel like I've been starving my creative side for a really long time. I started to write a cookbook of vegan and vegetarian foods from all over the world and some secret family recipes that are like the best ever. And so I think, well, okay, that could be a hobby, but also I'm like, should I go back to school? I want to go back to school. Should I get a PhD in policy analysis? I'm also explored deeply enough or researched
Yeah.
other interests of like, oh, I also want to get an MBA. And then I'm looking at flex programs at good schools. And then I was like, well, or do I just get a master's in public policy? I don't know. You see my problem?
So, yeah. And I think you're right in saying that not having that clarity is part of the reason you're not able to get from A to B, because if you don't know where you're going, it's like hard to get there. Um, some of the things I heard about your B is policy roles, more analytical stuff. But then if you did that, it will further suppress your creative side that you think you've been suppressing. So ideas of cookbooks and family recipes sound good. And school sounds like a nice part of the bridge between A and B, as long as you know where your B is. So maybe it's like you don't need a B right away. Maybe you need like A.2 where you stop at school and then you get to B. But regardless of what you do to get there, I think the idea of where you want to go is most important. So let me ask you, do you see your B as like an either or thing between something analytical and something creative?
I want to do
Or,
I want to do all of it. I feel like I've hesitated and stopped myself from acting on my dreams so often in life. Why do I think I have to go back to school? I have a doctorate in law. I've never taken a policy class, but I mean, there are people doing policy research with a doctorate in law, and well, they also have like a master's in emerging, specifically this type of technology. But am I just doubting myself again? I don't know. But yeah,
yeah,
I would.
I'm sure it hurts for you to say it and it hurts for me to hear that you've been like suppressing yourself for so long in an aim to be realistic. And I think you're reaching a point where you're like, wow, I can't do this anymore. I have trouble getting out of bed. And like depression, anxiety, they're clinical things, but if you don't feel like you have the energy to get out of your bed to live the life that you have created, then is that life really worth it? And you're asking the right questions. And maybe it is time to dismantle it and create a different life. So let's do a little exercise. Using our analytical mind, we get stuck. We get stuck in the loop. So we need to bring in the creativity. For this one, you can just close your eyes, relax. You don't need to look at me or anything. I want you to, and I know you meditate, so you know how to bring that state of relaxation in. So I want you to get to that deep, calm space as much as possible and use the power of your imagination, use your creativity to create the life that you are meant to live. And maybe imagine a house or a space. This is where you're living your best life. You're doing everything you want to do. You are going through your days with satisfaction, knowing that if today was your last day on earth, you wouldn't have done anything differently. Like that's the kind of life we're thinking about. So I'll give you a minute to imagine this house and imagine yourself living this ideal life inside that house.
Why is this so hard for me? I can see there's a lot of green around the house and inside the house.
Yeah.
I know that there's water. There's
Mm-hmm.
water running through the property or through the house. There's
Mm-hmm.
water nearby or in it.
What else do you notice?
I notice how I feel in this house. There's so much space. And it's a place where people can come and stay as long as they want any friends or family, you know. I feel abundant.
Yeah. Now, do this thing where go inside the house if you're watching it from the outside, and somewhere within this house is a little red box, shiny, bright, low.
I want to get rid of that box. I don't like jewelry.
Mhm.
Yeah. A box of jewelry.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm never gonna use these, so I'm just gonna give it all away. Gonna
Hmm.
offer a jewel to anybody who's visiting. Any of my close friends or family. Here, would you like a
Yeah.
jewel from my box? Or do you want to do
Yeah.
the whole thing?
Okay. You go to word it and you open it anyway. And on top of the jewels is a little symbol or message for you.
Am I supposed to share that with you?
Yes.
At first, I thought I saw a piece of paper, but then just kind of floating there. Not even a real physical. It's real. There's just an ohm, but I feel the vibration of ohm when I touch it.
You can thank this box for giving you the message.
Thank you,
And then
Red
you
Box.
can, yes, thank you, Red Box. And then you can make your way out of the house and eventually out of this world of imagination to come back to where you are now.
That house was great.
Some of the things you said about being in that place was that it was green, which I think symbolizes prosperity. It was flowy because of the water. It had a lot of space. It felt welcoming because you wanted all these guests over. And then it just felt abundant to you. So if we take the specifics away of what the house looks like, those are the qualities that you're desiring in your life. And when you're not able to have them, that's what's bringing up the not feeling good part that you mentioned earlier. One interesting thing that came up is like this red jewel box is like the treasure in the house, right? It's like a little box of treasures. It's like shiny and it has jewels. And you got a message from it. But even before you got the message, you had this feeling of, I would say, disgust toward this box almost, where you're like, why is this thing here? This means nothing to me.
I didn't want it. I was like, what is this? I wanted to throw it out and get rid of it. Isn't that amazing? Like, I wasn't even
Yeah.
inside until you told me to. I was just like, this is not mine. Whose is this? I don't care. Let's get rid of it. You know?
Yeah.
But then you said, oh, there's jewels inside, and then I felt an obligation to like give it away to people I appreciate. But isn't it amazing that I wanted to give this box away?
Hmm.
Like the
Yeah.
color, but that's just sort of superficial, isn't it? I mean, in some level. I would keep it if it was purple, but I'd throw out the jewels and just keep the box.
Yeah. It's the jewels that are bothering you. Maybe the color too, but let's stick with the jewels. So jewels represent riches, right? You don't want to keep the riches for whatever reason. You're perfectly happy giving them away, though.
But then yeah, I'd regret it later. Like, oh, I could have used
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. It's a good metaphor for your life, right? You've been feeling like you've not reached your potential. And you also talked about when you do create something of value, then you give it away. Like instead of
I don't,
naming your idea,
right,
somebody else takes it and then
right.
you regret it later.
Or just like, I don't
Mhm.
believe in myself and believe that I
Yeah.
could be successful with it. Ugh.
Mhm. Why do
Okay.
you think you're unworthy of riches?
Oh, man. Maybe it's internal messaging from how I grew up.
Say more about that.
My parents are both really unhappy, and honestly, they don't know how to love themselves and never did. So I feel like I didn't have a good example And they would say I love you to me, but I don't, they would verbally say things like, oh, you can be anything you want, do whatever you want to do, you know? And only when I was like failing at school or something in the first or second grade, you know, before I kind of woke up and I was like, oh, I'm really smart. I can do this. Before that, I mean, nobody seemed to care what I was doing unless I was a teacher complained or something. Like a teacher would say to them, oh, Serena's not paying attention in the back of the class. Then my mother would be like, oh, did you do your homework? And that would only last for a few days. Like nobody cared. Nobody put me to bed most of the time. Like I would stay up, I was 6 or 7, staying up until midnight. I would procrastinate on my homework. I feel like I had no rules, no discipline. No one cared enough. My mother was always just barely surviving herself. She was always like, oh, I have a migraine. She'd come right home, even when she did have a job, which always seemed to be changing. I mean, we moved around so much, and she'd come home and go right to bed. Sometimes she'd make dinner, and I'd get up too early for her to go to school with friends. We went early because of whatever reasons. We walked as a group, and I had to make my own breakfast, instant oatmeal, and I almost set the kitchen on fire once because I was too sleepy. And I left it like a Tupperware lid on top of the burner and it caught fire. And I was like sleep deprived. I got circles under my eyes. And I remember even my teachers didn't seem to care. Even when I was doing well, like I remember this one teacher called me in front of the class. He's long gone now, so I'll say his name. Mr. Head. The only teacher I remember was a bad one. Like I don't remember any of my teachers. I only remember him because it was so horrible. And he called me in front of the class and said, did you write this poem by yourself? And I said, yes. And I was very proud of my poem. It was a really good poem. I was always good with words, written words, not spoken. I get like performance anxiety. When I have to practice over and over again. And he's like, no, you didn't. An adult helped you, didn't they? And I was like, no, stop lying. He said this but just embarrassing me, shaming me in front of the class. And I was just like, oh my God. I I was just shocked. It was terrible. And the next time I wrote a poem in 5th grade, I remember another teacher was like, did you write this? Recite your poem. And I recited it. And he's like, can I keep this? And I thought he was going to make a copy and give it back to me, but he kept it. And I had a feeling that he thought it was too good. I must have like plagiarized or something. And that was 5th grade. And I was getting like A's and B's then. I was like doing well. And in high school, I got like straight A's for the first 2 years. Once, one teacher, I think it was Mr. Larson. It was the first time I felt like somebody really believed in me or just really wanted to give me positive, oh my God, what are you doing reading my paper in front of the entire, and he's like, this is one of the best essays I have read, if not the best essay in the last 10 years of my teaching. And I was like, I can't handle this attention, you know? I was
Wow.
like, I want to
You're
run.
like covering your face as you're telling me that. Like, it sounds like you're still like embarrassed by his faith in you. I think I am getting the sense that growing up, you knew that somehow your parents, because of whatever things that they were occupied with, were not really showing you to reach your full potential. Like you had an awareness that you're meant for more, but they don't have time for whatever reason to pay attention to you. But then as you grow up, you get to high school, you internalize that assessment of them, where it's almost like, why pay attention to Serena? She's God knows what she's worth, like we don't know or we don't care. And then when someone does care, you almost can't receive that care because you're like, what? Me? No, you must be wrong. Because at that point, your parents' attitude toward you becomes your own attitude toward you. You also mentioned that your mom didn't have a steady career. She's kind of switching jobs a lot and may have been a function of her circumstances. But that's also kind of the place you found yourself in, right? Where it's not like you've had a steady career that you've built on. It's been a little bit hip hoppy.
I feel like I haven't had a career. I've just had a series of unrelated.
Yeah, it's very hard for us to do that which hasn't been modeled for us because we learn how to be from a young age, largely by observing our parents and then by observing our peers and society at large. And it can seem like a good thing if your parents are setting like what is called like a more objectively good example. Even then, it becomes limiting at some point because then you can't leave your career. Let's say your mom had this stable career that she was so into, then that would also limit you. And at the same time, having a string of jobs without having a career can also limit you. So, kind of doesn't matter what you pick up from your parents.
Yeah.
What matters is that you will get to a point where that way of being would just not satisfy you. And I think that's the point you're
Yeah.
at.
That's exactly what has been happening. And this is why it's so important for me to envision my goal, be really crystal clear on it, and go for it. And I feel like I've done that in academia to an extent. I got a full scholarship based on merit and financial circumstances because my parents couldn't pay for college. And I got a full scholarship to study abroad in another country. And I got so many scholarships. And I just was like, wow, this is amazing. So I felt that's where my confidence came from, I think. That was the source of it. But of course, then in graduate school, I did not do so well. I was surviving. I was just trying to survive. And I feel like that my confidence was like crushed, after that. And then it was sort of like slowly, almost like just it would come in waves, for the last like 8 years or, maybe a decade or so.
You know why it was coming in waves? Because you habituated yourself to seeing external markers as how confident you feel, how much scholarship you get, where you get accepted, what your grades are. Like even, now, you're old enough to not be talking about grades, but you mentioned like I got straight A's for the first 2 years in high school. And it's just in these little ways that our psyche shows us like, hey, grades matter. What the world thinks of you matters. And because that confidence has been coming from the external and not from the internal, it ebbs and flows. Like maybe there are days you feel on top of the world and you have all these ideas of what you're going to do. And other days you're like, I can't even get out of bed. So,
I always do get out of bed.
yeah,
But you're right.
we wouldn't even be doing coaching if you were, that would be different. But I'm using it to tell you that the lows get kind of low when you don't have that sense of strength in yourself.
I know that I can't have a confidence that it's not going to be stable, or that's not the truth. I know it's not the truth just to look at external markers. And I try to tell myself, you know, I'm a child of God. God loves me. Everything's fine. And I maybe feel better for a while, but I don't really believe it. And I think that's what's holding me back.
Yeah. Can you think of a time? Just go back to the earliest time in your life that you can remember when you felt you were okay just because you were and you didn't need that external
Yeah,
validation.
and I usually don't care what people think unless it's a friend of mine or something. I usually don't think about these things. I try not to dwell on the past. Just try to go deeper into self-love now and really identifying thought patterns that have held me back in life and I've been journaling about that and being like, okay, this needs to change.
It can be tempting to talk or journal or self-love your way out of whatever you're feeling. And it definitely works in the short term, and we need that. But turning toward our worst fears, the most horrible things we think about ourselves, is the way to liberate yourself from that. It's by shining a light on the unconscious that we move past it, not by pushing it away and pretending it doesn't exist. See if you can remember a time when you felt confident and self assured.
You know when I felt confident? When I was interviewing for that job as a program manager. I was like, I got this. This job is mine. And I was really feeling like there was rapport with the VP I was interviewing with. And I was like, oh, I really like her. I would love a boss like that. And I was like, I can count on one finger bosses that I thought were good. And I think she's it. But I've decided moving forward that is going to be my new normal, with self-sacrificing my happiness, or being smaller, or trying to make myself smaller, or working with people who don't have integrity, or they're not kind and good managers of me, I guess, or partners, business partners.
It can matter a lot who your boss is in the external world.
But I'm my own boss too.
Yeah, I'm more curious, like, what was going on for you at that time that made you feel so confident when that interview process was going on?
There was this like knowingness that I had the ability to succeed in that role, and that I felt very worthy. I felt I also felt seen and recognized as the interviewing was going on. Like from the very beginning, she saw my background and was like, Serena, how can I convince you to work with me? And I was like, yeah,
Yeah, that felt good to hear.
that's the way people should be talking to me.
Yeah. Deep down, there's an awareness that
Yeah.
there is so much potential in you, and that's the way people should be talking to me and recognize my potential. But that's usually secondary. The first thing that happens is inside of you. I think that's where your gold mine is.
Don't laugh. This sounds kind of cheesy. But I was building myself up every morning and every evening, all day long. I was looking to feel good about myself and confirming my abilities. I was basically being my best friend and practicing self-love as like a daily, all day long thing. Not only that, I was walking a neighbor's dog just so I would get out of the house during the pandemic, because I was working remotely, and I was listening to an audiobook by a psychologist named Gay Hendricks, who's, some people think it's a little woo-woo. The book was Conscious Luck. And it's about basically, it's so many words. It sounds oversimplified, but basically believing that you're lucky and always in the right place at the right time. Also, just I believed I was taken care of no matter what. Like I just had a knowingness. It got to that point where I was just really, I guess, feeling connected with myself and the divine in my spiritual, it became an all day long spiritual practice. And it was in that I got 2 simultaneous job offers, which has never happened before in my life, I don't think. And I know other people like get 10 at the same time, but I then negotiated both and chose. I was about to go back into law. I was just like, okay, I need to meditate. And I got an answer, which one I was going to be happier in, which is the one with the bigger risk, too, I think, career wise. But I knew that was the right way to go. And I'm realizing I need to do the same thing now in my life for me to get past where I'm at. Now, I don't have a dog
Yes.
and I haven't been listening to that. But
Yes.
the rest of it,
No, but I feel like you got it. Like you see that the external world follows. It's the internal world that changes first and foremost. So instead of defining your A and B, it's good to define them in terms of what it would look like in the external world. But your A right now is you don't really believe that you will get lucky or good things would happen. You feel very stuck. And your B is that state that you just described, where, people are convincing you should come work with us, and that's happening because you believe that you're taken care of, you're in tune with the divine, and you expect positivity. And when you traverse the world with that belief, that's exactly what you're going to attract. Like law of attraction isn't something woo woo, like, you write 100 times a day, I want $1 million, I want a million. That's not how it works. That would be very, very caricature type of way to describe it. But how it really works is that you believe that that's how it's going to be, because we are living in a shared dream. We're constantly contributing to it. And then our external reality is unfolding based on what we first conceptualize inside us. And when you conceptualize that, that's what shows up. So that's the state you need to go to. Those are some of the practices you might want to do.
yeah.
You are always creating your life. You can always pause to observe how you are creating, because it's happening all the time. Because you don't want to be creating it unconsciously. Hey everyone, we're back. Thanks for listening to this session. There's so much for us to look at and unpack there, so let's get into it. The first most noticeable thing about Serena's story is her sense of confusion. When I ask her to define what's her A, what's her B, A is the stuck state she's in, but she's unable to get to what exactly her B is. And that itself is a clue that she won't be able to really move forward because she doesn't know what she's creating. And again, just because we can name it doesn't mean that it would happen. Our world gets co created and others become an instrument in our vision. We become an instrument in their vision. There's a whole process to it, but it starts with us being able to visualize an alternative reality to the one we're living in right now for us to even get going toward it. And confusion is a sign that our ego is in the driving seat. It is one of the ways in which our ego keeps us stuck, keeps us focused on a fear and survival based pattern where we start to value practicality over what we really want and what we want to imagine and create. So, this confusion is a sign that Serena's ego is in charge and she needs to get past the ego to her higher self to access that faculty of imagination. And one good thing is that she's not creating that split between I want this or that, because she wants it all, as she said. She has an awareness that as a spiritual being, anything and everything is available to her. She just needs to set her eyes on it. The other thing I want to point out here is that some of the confusion is also about, should I go back to school? Should I work? Should I work for myself, work for someone else? And all these are just mechanisms to get to the vision. So ideally, we want to hold the vision very clear, let it come from the deepest parts of ourselves. It's sacred. But then we want to be very loosely involved in how the vision comes true. We obviously take action, but sometimes the vision comes about in ways that we cannot anticipate because there are greater forces at play in creating that vision for us. So instead of thinking about whether I should do this program, whether I should go for this job or that, think about what your dharma is. What are you on earth for? What is the purpose you are meant to serve? And as you start to get to know what that is, the other stuff will fall into place. It's the degree that is in service of your dharma, and not your dharma that is going to take cue from your degree to see what I can and cannot do in this world. We really have it backwards sometimes, and I absolutely did. Growing up in India, there's a lot of emphasis on education, on getting the right degrees, and we wait for the degree to complete to be like, now we will know what to do. But it's actually the other way around. We always know deep within us what our purpose is, and the sooner we connect with that, the more easy it would become to decide whether this degree is important, whether it will serve it, or whether it's just our ego's way of keeping us stuck and confused. Let's talk about the visualization. I think that visualization really revealed what all was keeping Serena stuck. The vision itself is important, but the process of setting the vision is even more important because it reveals what is it that is stopping us. When I asked Serena to get past the external markers, forget what job you have, forget what degree you have, just think about how you feel in this future vision. As Serena starts to go toward that, her unconscious blocks are revealed. And we talked about several of these blocks. One was related to money. She just didn't want to keep any of the riches that are in this future. There's probably some unconscious beliefs around money and what that means that are keeping Serena stuck in jobs that pay less, that don't realize her full potential and don't reward her for bringing that potential. We also realize that she has really internalized the voices of her teachers from school and even the way she perceived her parents to be as a measure of what she is or isn't capable of, because she got so used to looking at the external world for telling her what her ability is. The teacher telling her whether or not she was capable of writing that poem, that has really stuck with her. And today, she is still looking to the external world to tell her what she should or shouldn't be. And we might call that being practical, but it's actually us handing over our imagination to someone else. Why don't you tell me what I get to be? And we don't want to give that power away. We need to keep that sense of agency. And we want to find within ourselves a way to be in this world where the inside dictates how life is going to go, where the inside shapes how we feel about ourselves, and where the inside tells us what our path is. And then the final thing I want to note about this session, and it's very subtle, is the interplay of the gunas. So the gunas in Vedic philosophy refer to states of being. They are essentially psychological states that we all go into, that we all cycle through. There's tamas, which is the state of darkness, inertia, ignorance. That's the stuck energy of our life. When I think of tamas, I visualize that mud that is viscous and thick and hard to move. That's what I visualize when I think of tamas. The other guna is rajas. Rajas is passion, activity. It's what gets us to seek and achieve. So it's the more active, the most active of the three gunas. And finally, we have sattva. Sattva is the harmony. It is the balance of the rajas and the tamas. For instance, during a day, we go out and we engage in a lot of activity. And then at night, we lie in bed and rest. And they're both important for us to be in harmony. Because if we were only doing, and not resting, then we would not feel balanced. So Vedic texts say that the ideal state to be is in sattva, which is to find that balance between tamas and rajas. So that's what you would call a spiritual state. Now, when I asked Serena to think of a time where she didn't feel the way she's feeling right now, just stuck, she talked about a time when she was job searching and she got two simultaneous job offers, something that had never happened to her. She talked about how she was building herself up and she had this faith that things are going to go right. So if you think about that state, her dominant gunas at that time were initially rajas because she's listening to audiobooks, she's building herself up. By herself, I mean her ego. So she's sending this message to her ego. You can do this, you got this. And that's what most modern self-help or motivation is. Build up the ego. Tell the ego it can get what it wants. And that is basically going in a rajasic state. That is why we're all seeking, we're all achieving, we're all trying to reach for more. Like, what is our next thing? That's why we don't stay satisfied at where we're at. Now, at some point at that time, she talks about just knowing that things will work out for her. That's when you get to sattva. That's when the striving stops and the striving is replaced by a knowing that things are going to work out for you. And it did for her. So that state that Serena was in was more on the rajasic and sattvic side. Rajas gave way to sattva as time went on. The state she's currently in, on the contrary, is a more tamasic state. She's stuck. She can't find the motivation to figure out what her next path is. She's lacking discipline. So she's very much stuck in this stopgap job and does not know how to get out of it. So she's in that muck. She's in that wet mud. And she's trying to come out of it, but every action feels so heavy. Now, when you want to go from that state of inertia, of ignorance, she's forgotten her true nature, right? That she can create whatever reality she wants. If you want to go from tamas to sattva, you just can't get there directly. That's not how the gunas work. The gunas work in a cycle. And tamas must go through rajas to get to sattva. So currently, Serena, if I just ask her to just visualize and be in a Zen state, she's just not going to be able to do it because that's just not how nature is designed. Nature is designed in a way that when you're in the state of inertia, you first get movement going. And as the movement gets going, you eventually transition to a place where you're doing the action without the attachment, where you just have a knowing, a sense of being. And that's how you get to sattva. So we didn't get to cover this in this session. And one session is often too small to take care of everything. But one of the things that Serena needs is to start setting small goals for herself, to start working towards something, to start bringing more activity into her life so she can transition from this state of inertia, of ignorance, of darkness, into a state of activity, passion, and seeking. And as she starts to do things, when she finds that enthusiasm within herself, from that place, she will be able to get to a sattvic state, a state where she feels in balance, she's harmonious, she's co-creating this reality like she wants to. Because she has this inner knowing. She knows that she has potential, and we all know that. And our psyche will always send us signs when we are not living up to our full potential. It will make us fall into a mood. It will make us confused. It will make us want to seek help like she did. And it's always sending us signs that, hey, this is not right. This is not why I took birth on earth. You need to give me something else here. You need to be doing something different. So I'm really glad that Serena sought coaching at this juncture because it is so helpful to get perspective on your situation, to know where to go. Because the one thing that tamas really needs is action. And sometimes the way we can motivate ourselves to do action is to take the action of setting up a coaching call, for instance, to take the action of listening to an audiobook, to reading a book, any sign that you can give to your psyche that you are ready to transition out of the tamasic state into a rajasic state to go to sattva is going to help you. So let's bring all this home. What does this discussion mean for you? If you've been operating in life without a vision, it is time for you to make that your priority. Life will always be busy. There will always be things to do. But a mindless way of doing is not going to get us anywhere. We will become reactive. We will go back to our default patterns. What we want to do instead is get in the driver's seat, not like with a lot of grasping type of energy, but a driver's seat where you're having fun, where it's like a pleasant road trip, but you still want to know your destination. So create that vision. And if you discover in creating that vision that something is seriously stopping you, that you're so confused that you can't even get there, pay attention to what might be stopping you. There might be something in your unconscious that is blocking you from going toward your vision. And that's such good information always. It shows you where your work lies. And finally, if you can't even get to the point where you have that vision, just do something. Take any action to get moving. Go out for a walk. Go talk to a friend. Go do 10 squats. Whatever it is. Tamas is stagnant energy. It needs movement. And you want to give yourself that movement to get those creative juices flowing again. And eventually the vision will come to you. All right, that's all we have for today. Take care. Create your vision, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for being my partner in Sublime today. I hope you enjoyed diving into the unconscious with me. To ask a question or get coached on the show, visit shagunchopra.com/ask or click the link below. See you next time.